Good morning, Vuyiswa Ramokgopa. Welcome. How are you?
Good morning, Tshidi Madia. It is an absolute privilege to be here with you.
She's going to make me giggle this whole entire time. I apologize. So today we are chatting to, I don't have this question in my mind. I do think she is absolutely an extraordinary woman who is being celebrated for her leadership. To a lot of people, Vuyiswa Ramokgopa might be new, but she's been around for a while. She's somebody who boldly says it. Born from Hillbrow, Vuyiswa Ramokgopa launched her first venture, a retail clothing boutique in downtown Jersey in 2009. Since then, she's founded and led multiple businesses and held senior leadership positions in both corporate and non-profit sectors. As we speak, she is the youngest executive, right? In Premier Panyaza Lesufi, youngest MEC in Premier Panyaza Lesufi's executive. She's the MEC for Agricultural and Rural Development in Johannesburg. Again, Vuyiswa, good morning. How are you?
I am excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
The one thing about Vuyiswa is that she is a ball of energy. I think you can hear it, right? Even in the hello. Welcome to the show. Let's start with tonight.
Okay.
I was taking calls from a lot of people about what the expectations are from the Premier in terms of his plans, his opening, the 7th legislature. You go there as part of that, not just as an outsider.
Yes.
You had a lot of views in the lead up to the elections about what ought to be done to get Gauteng moving.
Yes.
What are your expectations tonight?
Well, fortunately, being part of the cabinet, I've actually had an opportunity to have input and to give input to what is going to be presented tonight. So I'm not working in the dark in the way that I was last time. And very much, in the spirit of the Gauteng government of provincial unity, it is a reflection, I think, of a broad range of views from different parties and different constituencies. And I am expecting to see a reflection of those views. I think we've raised sharply a number of issues. It goes without saying that the biggest crisis we have is the unemployment crisis in our province, in our country. 33% unemployment rate, 60% youth, it's a problem. And so we, as the economic engine of this country, have to take the lead in addressing the unemployment challenge. And I really want to see, a strong message around that and some practical interventions and plans about how we plan to grow the economy, how we plan to attract investment, how we plan to train young people with skills of the future, to be able to capitalize on the new industries that are coming. And of course, there's all the other things that we know about Gauteng. You mentioned in your opening, I'm a born and bred
a Hillbrow baby, a
Josie girl.
Yeah.
So for me, it's always so heartbreaking to drive through the CBD, the home, the place where I grew up, where I have so many fond memories, and to see the dilapidation and dereliction, of buildings. And mind you, some of these are hijacked buildings, but many of them are also government-owned buildings. And I think as government, we must also, take responsibility for the state of our city and the state of our province. And I think those are the things that we want to see, an increased focus on renewing our CBDs and not exacerbating the urban sprawl issues that we have in the province.
I'm going to backtrack now and go back to where I was going.
Okay.
Being 38, being the youngest in the room as far as the provincial cabinet is concerned.
Yes.
I remember you announced when you were out of the country as it is. What's it been like for you being in the executive and learning statecraft from this particular perspective?
Yeah, it really is a very different perspective, as you say. It's so much easier to be outside and commenting on what you think could be happening or should be happening. But, the nature, I think, of government is that it is bureaucratic, highly compliance orientated. And, I think that's the biggest adjustment for me coming from the world of entrepreneurship, coming from a much more leaner and, sort of more easier moving machinery.
Well, it's easier to be agile. I imagine the
definitely.
beauty of being your own boss is I can say we need to do this and then do it.
Exactly. You make a decision today, you implement today. So I definitely think that's something that, that is a function of governments the world over. However, there is still a lot that can be done and should be done to alleviate those red tape issues, to move us from being an impact. We must be an impact-driven government, not simply a compliance-driven one. And I think that culture shift is a really fundamental one in how we actually start to deliver meaningful progress for the people of our province and our country.
You're also part of Rise Mzansi. I want to go into you, the person, but I
Yes.
also want to get the politics out of the way because
Yes.
that's what
That's what
that's
got
what we
me
know
here.
you for. That's why we know you. Um, Part of Rise Mzansi, new baby on the scene, and met with, like, I think, a mixed bag, mixed reactions, really.
Yeah.
Your assessment of how people understood what Rise Mzansi stood for,
Yeah.
and also how you've managed some of the difficulties, because what I think was difficult around Rise Mzansi has to be the question of funding, the constant question of funding around Rise Mzansi, which I don't think has fully left you behind. But what's it been like navigating a new baby in such a highly contested election?
Well, I mean, it was interesting because we started Rise Mzansi effectively at the end of 2022. So, for those who have built organizations or companies or anything, the startup phase is always very challenging. You are scrambling for resources, you are bootstrapping, you're doing whatever you can do. Even trying to attract talent becomes difficult because you don't have resources to do so. So we really started from the ground up, with a few people around the table who were willing to chip in where they could. And then we started the journey of building. But building, a startup whilst contesting an election is probably one of the wildest things I will ever do in my life. And it was really, really intense. And as you're saying, there's all of these kind of social conversations that are taking place. The South African political landscape is shifting right under our feet. And I think very much, our entrance into the space was quite it spurred conversation, it spurred reflection. There were questions and things that we were able to ask. There were ways in which we were able to disrupt the norms of politics. I mean, the fact that somebody like me, however you understand me to be, is now, on the other side of the table is not something that would have been possible in our minds 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So I think the fact that we have been able to actually even bring life to some of the things that we envisioned is really exciting. So, it's been tough. Probably the hardest thing, and I think Songezo attests to the same. He says it's the hardest thing he's ever done.
I can't get over that he's on the other side. Every time I see something, I'm like, you're on the other side. You're not one of us
Yes.
anymore. I can never get over it. Let's speak about the journey, from being somebody who had a boutique, right, shop, to property, because at some point you were also involved in property.
Yeah.
How do you chart that journey? Talk me through the journey, Vuyiswa. What inspired you? What drives you
Yeah.
from I will look at clothes to this to today?
Tshidi, I'm a chronic problem solver. I'm always in problem solving mode. And when I see a problem, my first impulse is how can I solve it? If there isn't a solution that is available, then I need to be the one who solves it. And I think that is really what led me down the path even of entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is just solving other
It's
people's
problem
problems
solving,
and
yeah.
making money out of it, if you're lucky, if you're lucky. So, even starting my boutique, it was a problem I was trying to solve. I couldn't find the kind of clothes I wanted to wear at the price I could afford to pay. And at the time, we didn't have all these other retailers, Bozara, H&M, these fashionable things. And I was 22 years old. I had already started my career in retail as a buyer. I had now traveled the world a bit. I'd seen the range and the prospects and what's available out there. And we had such limited options in South Africa. And so there was a problem. And I thought, okay, let me solve it. And that was how I kind of started that. Similarly, when I entered into the property space, I entered as the CEO of the South African Institute of Black Property Practitioners. And again, that's a non-profit organization. I knew nothing about sort of property at a technical level, but there was a problem that I definitely saw. And the problem was that we have a serious imbalance in terms of property ownership, asset ownership, wealth distribution in our country. We are the most unequal country in the world. And a big function of that is the fact that we have not been able to really dig into the structural reasons of why people are unable to, take themselves out of poverty, build wealth, and move into the next layer. And so going down this route and championing transformation in the property sector and driving, black property ownership, supporting entrepreneurs. We raised money also for major bursary programs, I think about 6 million rand for young people to actually get into property to begin with, so we can start that process. So for me, again, it was seeing a problem that I thought, let me figure out the space so that I can be part of solving it. And that's also then, that led me into my business ventures, which again were always targeted at solving issues that I saw. And in conclusion, that's how I find myself in politics. Because ultimately, the problem that I foresaw was that the people that really cared the most and wanted to see change the most were never in the room where the biggest decisions were being made and where budgets are being allocated. And we may be outside, we may have opinions and views, but you have limited power to actually enact the change you want to see. And that is how I now find myself here.
I want to speak a little bit about women as well in this conversation, because the one thing I've picked up on is you're also quite big on, I don't want to call it womandla, but really it is, right? Women empowerment and the importance really of supporting women, putting women forward, and particularly young women. It's an important message seemingly that I've attached to you specifically. What is so important about that for your journey?
Well, I mean, I think it goes without saying, of course, I myself am a woman. I identify as such, and I am a woman. But beyond that, I think that the role of women in society is so important, both at a social level, at a political level, and at an economic level. Coming from having worked in the marketing space, those in the marketing space will know that some of the biggest decision makers as far as consumer products are women. So if you want to sell a product, you must target it at the decision maker, who is either the woman in the home, or the child in the home, interestingly enough. And so for me, it's saying we can never reach our full potential as a country if we are not able to tap into the fullest potential that we have available to us. And so we must ensure that women participate fully in the economy. They participate fully in policy making, in decision making, that they lead organizations, because again, we bring a very different perspective on leadership. When we sit at the table, we're able to bring a different aspect of leadership to the table that I think is desperately needed, actually, in our current environment. We need leadership that's cooperative. We need leadership that is empathetic. We need leadership that is orientated towards society, social good, all of these things. And I think these are qualities that women are able to bring into the discourse, but also into the leadership. And I think so that's why it's really important for me. Obviously, I do everything in my power to find women who are inspiring, to keep company with other women who are inspiring to me as well, because I think that's also important, building communities of women that are able to advance each other, like me and you, since we're now best friends.
No, listen, we're besties, there's no question. I think my colleague Alpha Ramushwana, one of our juniors here, was surprised when we saw each other at the opening of Parliament. And there's a clip, I think, where you're like, oh, Tshidi's here. And then Alpha was like, we're so excited to see you.
I was beside myself.
She's my person. Leave me alone. What's it been like also being a woman, though, in this space? The one thing about being in politics that I've known, even as a journalist, is when they say toxic, it's not an understatement. When they say ugly, it's not an understatement. It really is the way the industry is, the sector is, the things that are said behind closed doors by people you try and respect because of positions that they hold is actually quite shocking. What's it been like for you?
Look, fortunately, because I have been part of I've been a founding member of Rise Mzansi, and I've been an integral part of building the culture of the organization, alongside many of the other women leaders, by the way, within Rise Mzansi. we've been able to really discuss those types of things in detail to say, what do we feel is broken about politics? This toxicity that you speak of, this patriarchy that you speak of, and just the nature of politics that is so repellent, not just to women, but I think to most sane people. We have to fix that, because we need to have a political environment that is accommodating, that is inclusive, and that is able to harness the best talent in society. So for me, at least, coming from an organization that values that, has created a platform where I'm able to lead in my fullest self and authenticity. But I'm not obviously an island. You operate in a broader context. You operate in a country that is very traditional. You operate in a country that's very patriarchal. We operate in an unsafe environment. You go into communities, for example, where you get met by thugs threatening or saying you're not allowed entrance into a certain community
we don't
hall
speak to women
or building.
We face that.
Yeah. But
we face it every day. Yeah.
But for me, it's very much about not. I'm not trying to cosplay being a man. I think feminine power and feminine energy is exactly what's needed in this space. And so, for me, it's really about leaning into that rather than trying to acclimatize to what's around me. Part of the issues that you raise are a function of the fact that we don't have enough women influencing and shaping our politics. And so, for me, it's not just about me, but it's about saying I need to be able to ensure that when I leave this room or leave this table or leave this office, that this space is that much better for the next woman that will come after me.
How difficult is that? And I ask it, if you looked around you, there were so many political parties vying for power. Only two that I could count had women leaders at the helm. You had Good with Patricia DeLille. You had Sarah, the Rainbow Alliance, with Colleen Makubele.
Yeah.
In 2024, with everything that's been done by women in a particular fight in this country, we only, out of over 50 political parties in essence, had two women.
Yeah.
With our voting power as well.
Yeah, Tshidi, and I've had this conversation, I've reflected on it myself. Patriarchy, just like racism or any of these other social ills, is systemic. It requires it's a two-player sport, basically. So it's about the people that sort of enforce it, but those that have also accepted it and taken on those beliefs. And the reality is that there have been parties, like I think there was a party in the last election cycle called Women First.
Yes, it was.
You remember that party?
Now I'm shaking my head because I found that party to be so strange. But it was. And I also asked them about, why is it that you're not getting out? You're not being voted
exactly.
for.
So, but I'm saying it's not just about the numbers and saying we are the majority, we are 51%. The nature of patriarchy in our society is that it is systemic. It is upheld by both men and women. And so we have to, it's a longer term project and an intentional longer term project of saying, how do we reflect on ourselves as a society? What do we need to do to create true equity and to create a world that is safer, that is more just, that is more equal, and where women can actually have a place in society? It's not just about solving for a woman president, a single woman president, or a single woman head of a political party.
But how far are we from that, though? Even though it's not just about that,
Yeah.
that is something you want to believe
Of course.
is a possibility, it's within reach. We came close when the ANC had Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. I could even argue that maybe at some point the ANC was close when it had Mamwini Madikizela Mandela and its Mahican conference that didn't come through. How far are we? It's got to feel that we can touch it, and I don't know if we can feel it any longer.
Well, I think that the world around us, one, is changing. We're seeing a lot more of that. I remember the first time, when I think it was Finland elected a prime minister who was 32 or something.
Yes,
a 32-year-old woman. That was unheard of globally. I mean, we're watching the U.S. elections unfolding right in front of us. they are still talking about a first woman president. Like, these people basically invented this thing. But they are still ideating about it and hoping.
I'm gonna pause there and I'm gonna reserve my comments about American democracy because they're not great. I'm hanging out with Rise Mzansi's chairperson, MEC for Agriculture and Rural Development in the province, Vuyiswa Ramokgopa. I said to you earlier, she is the lady with the good hair. I don't know if you've ever seen Vuyiswa Ramokgopa's hair. Like, her hair is absolutely stunning. What is the secret? I'm so jealous. You see, my hair is a mess right now. I'm like, so every time I see you, I'm like, yeah. I was talking on Instagram yesterday, and my takeaway really is, yeah, this is the lady with the good hair. What is the secret? Goodness.
Thank you, Tshidi. Thank you. I appreciate that. Look, I mean, I think it's probably a big part of it is just genetics.
That's not fair.
But besides that, it's consistency and a solid, consistent hair care routine. I used to be really bad with hair care until my husband declared that he is also an investor. He's highly invested in this hair project, and so I then was motivated to actually invest in the hair and to focus on hair care. So yeah, that's
that's where the motivation came
that's
from.
Where the motive. In
we
fact,
thank the husband. She calls him the motu on Instagram. It's really, really sweet. I'll talk about that in a little bit more. 011-883-0702 if you want to speak to the MEC, but also speak to the woman behind the MEC, the woman who opened a boutique, is involved in multiple businesses, and then randomly found a way in politics, as you said, seeking to problem solve. The chairperson of Rise Mzansi and MEC of Agriculture and Rural Development in Gauteng. When you appointed, people were like, there's rural development to be done in Gauteng. Were you surprised by the portfolio you received?
Yes and no, in that it wasn't necessarily like it wasn't that we requested it or that I requested it, but I was really happy when it was presented as an option, because I felt it did give me an opportunity to really bring to life some of the things that we had been championing and that we had been raising awareness around. So I'm very excited about the portfolio. And I have also, been equally enlightened about how much of Gauteng is quote unquote rural. And there really is a lot of opportunity to activate those peri-urban and rural parts of Gauteng and build our economy.
Breathe easy, lovers. Breathe easy, lovers. Oh, God, so I can't sing like Clement, but what a song. Why this song? I know why I'm in love with the song still. We are here in the studio, myself, Vuyiswa, and Abel here, asking ourselves about what year did the song come out, how old are we? The song is still magic.
It is. It's so, it just took me right back to 2005, I think it was, somewhere around there. But I know it was my varsity years.
So is this why you love the song?
It is. It just reminds me of a really happy and fun time of life.
For the nostalgia.
Yeah, the first time I was out on my own in the world, I had my own place. And yeah, I mean, we were listening to all of this music and yeah, good times.
Is this when you were studying at UCT in Cape Town? Is this when
That's right,
you were like, oh my God, I'm in Miss Independent.
That's right.
I'm hitting Long Street. The clubs are good.
Cape Town, here we come.
That's good to know.
In fact, I just got a message from one of my old friends, or one of my friends who I went to varsity with, and she's like, you're taking us all back, So I think it's a happy memory for all of us.
All right, I've got a couple of calls lined up for you. A couple of people want to ask you a couple of questions. Tando in Joburg. Good morning. You want to speak to MEC Vuyiswa Ramokgopa?
Good morning, ladies. How's it?
Morning, Tando.
Good. I just want to say congratulations to you for this position that you got, and to your party as well, because I think this will serve as a motivation to people like you who are not politicians as such, but who want to help the country to go forward. Because we need more people like you. Politicians have let us down, and we need to take a different direction now. And I think you have all it takes to do that. And I think your input in the city of Joburg, in the Gauteng province, will will be treated with respect, because I know the ANC has a tendency of appointing people and not really giving them power. So I have one question, and this is something I've been asking myself as we're going towards the vote. Why didn't you join forces with like-minded parties like BUSA and the rest of them? Because I feel maybe you could have gotten more votes if you joined forces with others. I could have voted for you if because I felt voting for you guys, you're a small party and you won't get a lot of votes, since it's your first time.
So you just didn't. So you didn't vote for us, Mzansi.
Heaven.
Yes, I just want to be honest. But if I knew you were going, in join forces with other parties, there was a better chance. Like I don't understand why you don't work with, for example, Mashaba's party, Action SA. I think you have more in common. Instead of having a lot of small parties, I don't think it's really helping us in our country.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right, Tando, thank you so much. I want to give you an opportunity. Thank you, Tando. Have a good day. I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to Tando. Calvin in Walkerville, I do see you. I'll come to you in a little bit. Why did you not join forces with Musi Maimani, Herman Mashaba? Would have been easier that way?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think, there's a perception that just because all those parties are led by, let me say, the new faces or the new kids on the block, I don't even know how to put it, that they inherit.
Or from attachments to the Democratic Alliance. We can call a thing a thing.
Well, except ours. But anyway, more on that later.
Well, Ghana's there, so please.
No. I'm talking about the leaders.
Yeah.
There's a perception that just because there may be some cosmetic similarities that creates fundamental synergy. But the reality is that there really are some core differences at an ideological level and at an approach level between the different parties. And I'm not really here to talk about others, but I'll say, Rise Mzansi is very clear about being social democratic in our orientation. Center left, I think, is what some may describe us. That means our view on economic policy, on redistribution, on transformation, on issues around BEE. Those are really fundamental things. Those are fundamental topics for the people of our country that we don't take the same position as the likes of Action SA. And even looking at some of the solutions, the manifestos that we put forward, if you track, the approach to some of these things and really look at it at a policy level, you'll start to see that there's actually quite a bit of difference there. Now, does that mean there's no opportunity to collaborate or to work together in certain instances? Of course not. And I think the door is still open for those conversations in future. But I think what was very important for us in this election was to, test our own offering, test our thinking around the solutions that we have, the cohort of leaders that we have. We're also not driven by kind of one big celebrity leader. And I think that was also a fundamental difference of Rise Mzansi. It was a party of ordinary people who wanted to come together to make a change. And I think, we've now obviously gotten the election results, and I think those conversations are happening. Just for example, we have recently, announced our collaboration with Good in the Western Cape, because looking at a policy level, at an ideological level, theory of change, we have a lot of similarities actually with the likes of Good. And so from a local government perspective, that collaboration now exists. So I don't think the door is closed to that, but I think that we need to move past the kind of cosmetics of politics and really start to understand what these parties stand for at a policy level.
I thought it was an interesting move that was done by Good. Definitely caught us off guard, that announcement around the development in the city of Cape Town. I've got Calvin in Walkerville who also wanted to speak to Vuyiswa. Calvin, good morning. You can go ahead.
Hi, good morning, ladies. Thank you so much for taking my call. And then to the MEC there, I think you've got a good choice of music. You're taking us back to the days.
Yes.
With that said, MEC, congratulations on your appointment. I think it's greatly advantageous for us to have people of your caliber, who's not only about the politics and point scoring, etc., but who has a passion for what's real. So I think also the purpose why I'm calling you, you've made the statement there that you didn't really know how much of Gauteng is really rural areas. Now, I happen to be in the crocodile farming industry, and there's actually a handful of us. You know, you can count on one hand. There's not a lot of black crocodile farmers in the region. And it's fair to say that government doesn't really step in assisting us. And we can play such a vital role in terms of empowering communities in a close vicinity of ourselves. But we've been knocking on government doors, and it really just falls on deaf ears. So hopefully with you being in that position, maybe there's a glimmer of hope for farmers such as ourselves.
All right, thank you for that, Calvin. MEC?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Calvin, for enlightening me too. This is you're the first crocodile farmer that I've ever
Crocodile
heard of.
farmer also. I've never
in Gauteng,
actually.
but I have actually eaten crocodile meat before in my life. So I definitely, I mean, I had to assume it comes from somewhere. So thank you for that. And I think, I'd encourage you to get in touch and to really enlighten us. Part of, information is power. So share that information with us and let's see how we can work together to grow the crocodile farming industry.
I want to bring in Nyana, who's in Centurion. I am enjoying being with Vuyiswa. I'm definitely loving her taste in music. You wanted to chat to her?
Yes, please. Thank you, Tshidi. You guys are having such a vibe there. I want to sing along. As I was listening to the conversation that you have with Vuyiswa, goodness, she is such a breath of fresh air, and I feel very represented through her views, what she's accomplished and what she wants to accomplish. I just feel like someone has heard me and I echo her sentiment. I'm just so excited. I'm excited for this new leadership that's entering in. She just excites me.
All right, thank you so
Yay,
much.
Thank you so much. I'm also very excited.
Thank you. You also do things differently. Thank you so much, Nyana. You also do things differently. I remember campaign season, and you were campaigning in the Joburg CBD. S2 Hassani from the AC loves to bring up that video to mock you.
I know
how
what democracy looks like.
He's always mocking you for that video, and I always see Khaupa Lelui. I love Khao.
Yes.
I was like, oh my God, here's the headache again. But that's the thing. You are doing things differently. We are used to seeing door to door so different.
Yeah.
And then you come along and you're like, no, that's not how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm running out of time, but I actually did want to speak to you about being a mom, how you balance all of this with all of that, because that looks very demanding, motherhood.
I love being a mom. I love my family. I'm very family orientated. And that's truly how I fill my cup, So for me, it's not a parallel project. It's an integral part of how I show up every day. But in saying that, it takes a village, Tshidi. You don't get to do all the things you want to do without a support network. I have an incredibly supportive husband. I have, access to childcare. I have a mother and a mother-in-law who are very involved. So I'm very blessed in that regard. And I think, it also just speaks to how we need to be thinking even about women and our role and our participation broadly, because it's not just about, I shouldn't have to sacrifice everything that I want to do and everything that I want to be and being a mother just to be able to pursue and contribute, to the country. And I think we need to think really systematically about that and how we enable women to participate more. And just as a point, this is why also during the campaign as Rise Mzansi, we focused so much on the issue of childcare and having free and safe, affordable childcare to enable women to be free to pursue, careers and to contribute meaningfully.
On that note, I am fast running out of time. A parting shot really from you about what you want us to take away. I didn't even ask you what you do in terms of like hobbies, downtime, but a parting shot, because I think the political conversation and where you are matters so much to so many of us. And as I think it's Mzansi who from Centurion called and saying that, it's a breath of fresh. It's important to also recognize people like you in our system and who are doing politics slightly differently from what we've seen over the years in the country.
Yeah. Look, I think that was such an encouraging comment because I do think that is our generational mission, and I talk to my own generation, but I speak to also subsequent generations, is that we have a responsibility to define our future. And that means defining the type of politics we want, the type of leadership we want, the political culture that we want, and the country that we want. And we must be bold enough to show up as ourselves in our fullness, whatever that may mean, because that is how we're going to move the country forward. We can't be defined by what happened in 1910, 1920. It is what it is, but I'm saying our responsibility is saying, how do we build the kind of future that all South Africans will want to live in and all South Africans will enjoy?
All right. And on that note, that's it from us. Thank you so much.
Hanging out with Clement
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.